Hello, I'm Jared Taylor with American Renaissance. If you ever get into a debate about immigration and say you want whites to remain a majority in the United States, someone will tell you that white people don't really have a right to America because we took it from the Indians. Let me explain just how stupid this argument is. First of all, does anyone think the Indians didn't take land away from each other or simply exterminate each other? There's a place in South Dakota called Crow Creek where archaeologists found the scalped, horribly mutilated bodies of 486 men, old women, and children. There were hardly any bodies of young women because they were taken as sex slaves. The entire settlement was wiped out in what archaeologists think was a fight over arable land. When did this happen? In the mid-1300s, long before Columbus. When white people showed up, they found that Indian tribes were battling each other constantly. The French explorer Pierre La Vérendrye was one of the first Europeans to learn about the Assiniboine Cree and the Sioux. In 1743, he reported that, quote, "From time immemorial, they have been deadly enemies." A French priest wrote about a battle in 1742 in which the Assiniboine Cree killed or captured 270 Sioux. That would have been the population of an entire village. At about the same time, the Crow Indians drove the original Indian settlers out of the Yellowstone Valley. It's a pleasant place, as you can see. And they found themselves surrounded by hostile tribes. As the years went by, they would very likely have been exterminated, except that they had an alliance with, guess who? It was the U.S. cavalry who protected them from their enemies. The Muskogee and the Choctaw had a land dispute and in 1790 slaughtered nearly 500 of each other in a single battle. Also in the 18th century, the Blackfoot tribe took the land of the Kootenai and the Flathead Indians and part of the Shoshone lands at the foot of the Rockies. In arid parts of the Southwest, the Hopi and the Zuni fought each other over arable land. As for the Comanche, after they got horses, they drove the Osage, the Cheyenne, and the Arapaho out of their hunting grounds. During the Civil War, the Comanche pushed white settlers in Texas 100 miles back to the east. They raided as far as 400 miles into Mexico, where they took thousands of slaves. Parts of northern Mexico were almost completely depopulated because of Comanche raids. But let's get back to the Sioux. They called themselves Lakota, which means allies. Other tribes called them Sioux, a name the Ojibwa first gave them, which means snakes or enemies. They were originally from the Great Lakes, but were pushed west by the Ojibwa and the Cree. Over a period of 200 years, they fought at least 28 different tribes and drove the following people off their land: the Pawnee, the Ponca, the Arikara, Iowa, Mandan, Hidatsa, Assiniboine, and the Crow. The Sioux lands recognized in an 1868 treaty with the U.S. government, which you can see in yellow, were all taken from other tribes who were there first. The biggest battles the Lakota Sioux fought against the U.S. cavalry, including the Battle of Little Bighorn, were over land that originally belonged to other Indians. Further west, in Montana, in 1866, the Piegan Indians killed more than 300 of their enemies, the Crow and the Gros Ventres, in just a single battle. This is more than the highest estimated casualty counts for Indians in any engagement with the U.S. Army. Did you know that after contact with whites in the 19th century, more Indians in the West died fighting each other than died fighting whites? I sure didn't until I started looking into this. So yes, we took the land from the Indians, and they fought like hell to keep it. But no one ever says the Indians didn't have the right to defend their land just because they took it from somebody else. No one says that. All around the world, people are living on land they took from other people. Does that mean they don't have rights to it? All of North Africa, for example, was conquered by the Arabs, who forced the locals to convert to Islam or die. Does that mean Morocco, for example, isn't allowed to have an immigration policy because the people living there now took the land from somebody else? European history is an endless story of conquest. Before the First World War, Hungary was 3 times bigger than it is today. It was officially carved up in 1920. So does that mean that the Slovaks, the Romanians, and the Croatians who helped themselves to huge chunks of Hungary can't have an immigration policy? And who's this guy? He's Augusto Peña Nieto, the president of Mexico. Take a good look. Does he look like this guy, for example? This is a real native Mexican. Here are more indigenous Mexicans. And here is the current Mexican cabinet. They don't look like native Mexicans either, do they? The guy who looks the most like a native Mexican is the one in the upper left-hand corner, Miguel Chong. And the only reason he looks like an Aztec is because he's half Chinese. And here's President Peña Nieto with his wife, Angelica. Maybe I just can't see straight, but she doesn't look much like this lady, who is a Mexican Indian, or these ladies, who are also indigenous. Could it possibly be that Mexico's rulers took Mexico from the Indians too? Oh, no, no, no. That would mean they couldn't have an immigration policy. But just see what happens to you if you try to immigrate illegally into Mexico. So you see, this idea that history disqualifies white Americans from deciding who lives here is baloney. It's an argument people use only against whites. It's just one more double standard intended to browbeat whites into thinking they have no right to survive as a people. Don't fall for it. But do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks very much for listening.